Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with Lindsay to talk about Lindsay. We're going to talk about you. So
okay.
We're going to try to get to the bottom of this Canadian legend, at least in my books. You're a Canadian legend. You're my neighbor.
Kind.
You're like a stone throws away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And because of this COVID, we haven't gotten to hang out.
Yeah.
I don't know, in over a year now, almost 2 years. I think the last time I saw you was at a show downtown Toronto in 2019, back when shows still happened.
Yeah, right around after Christmas, before New Year's.
Before Christmas I think was right like a couple of weeks before Christmas.
Vesperia, right?
Yeah,
no. Yeah.
Was there an album release party, or there was something along those lines? And you know, it seemed like we had the whole world ahead of us, and then everything came crashing down.
Yeah, that was really tough for me, because that was during a time when it was like I had left Cradle of Filth, but nobody knew. And I was just like, yeah, I'm still part of the scene. I'm still cool. But that night meant a lot to me, because I was suffering back then with burnout, and seeing you and seeing all my friends that night really made a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing about the metal scene in Toronto and the metal scene in general and that's one of the things that I miss the most, is that friendship aspect of us hanging out at shows, at our friends' bands that are playing, go to their shows, support them, but at the same time hanging out, and that sense of friendship and family is one of the things that I miss the most.
Me too. That's been the hardest part. I do miss all my metalhead friends. I'm like, man, I just want to go out and like hang out with you guys and talk stuff, like, why don't we do that in Durham? But this is the best we can do right now.
Yeah, this is the best we can do. So before we get into the 5 bands that have had the biggest impact on you, let's talk a little bit about how things got started for you, because you live in Oshawa. I don't know if you're exactly from Oshawa or you're from more of the GTA and moved to Oshawa, but you're from the Toronto area. Let's put it that way.
Durham region. It's like the eastern brother sister to Toronto.
So how did things start for you? Did you start with a harp? Did you start with a different instrument? Was it singing that really connected with you? How did it all get started for Lindsay?
I loved singing since I was really little. I was in a lot of the elementary school plays. We did like Wizard of Oz, a lot of Disney stuff, and I was in the choir, mainly singing the leads, because most of my life I've been very harmonically challenged. Like doing harmonies for me is like, what, I'm not singing the lead line, like my brain's not having it. So that's where it started. But then my dad he plays music. He actually was in a few bands in his youth, so we're talking like in the 60s. And there was just guitars all around the house, like all different, like a 12-string, a classical, acoustic, electric. And that kind of got my interest when I was about 8. And he showed me like the classics, like Eagles, the Beatles, like Fleetwood Mac, Johnny Cash, like, a lot of country. So that's where it started. But I played piano for a little bit. I didn't like my teacher. The teacher makes all the difference. So I kind of fell off of it, for like, I don't know, like the later of the first decade of my life. Like, what do you call like when you're 9 and 10 and 11? I don't know. But then it a lot of influence from Disney, a lot of singing along to Disney's music, especially during the 90s, because that was like big years for them, with all their musical movies and what have you. But the big change came in high school when I was 15, and alternative music had like a huge boom in the early 2000s. And that was where it really picked up. I formed an all-girl punk band. We were terrible, but it was like,
punk was the band. Was that the name? We Are Terrible?
No, we were called Princess Riot. We were a lot like Jack Off Jill, but like Jack Off Jill did it well. We were the Diet Pepsi version of Jack Off Jill. We were just so bad. But we were young. We were like 14, 15, barely in lessons, just making noise, getting at our teen angst. And that's where it started. And then a lot of the alternative music at the time, Manson was huge, Slipknot, Korn, Linkin Park, Evanescence, Kittie, Chevelle, like that was all happening at that time. Ozfest was a big thing when I was in high school. So that's where it really, really started. But when I tell people like I'm a huge fan of trip hop and electronic music and witch house, so they're just like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like metal is kind of like this thing I fell into as a classical musician that like never let me go away. Like, so you're in metal now, you're a metal musician, that like, we don't care. I'm like, okay.
Was it during that period of time in your teenage years that you perhaps the light bulb went on and you said, you know what, I kind of want to do this as a career? Was that at that
Yeah,
time?
it was like, you just, when you know, like there's some people like they know when they're 12, 13, 14, 15, like this is what I'm going to do with my life. And it was like a fire inside that just engulfs everything, and it keeps you warm and alive and excited. And that was music. And very hard for my blue and white collar working parents to like understand that, especially with them being boomers. They're like, why would you want to do that with your life? Why don't you become a veterinarian? What's wrong with
Or
you?
a doctor, or
Yeah, or a lawyer. Like I probably would have made a really good lawyer. I don't put up with anyone's shit these days, but private detective too, definitely. But so it was kind of like I knew, and I think it was Blink 182. I went over to a friend's place and we watched like one of their live DVDs, and I just saw it all. And that's when I think I discovered like what a bass guitar was, which was my first instrument along with singing. And there was no stopping me. Like that was like, ever since that day, I'm like, what's next? What are we doing today?
Did you start taking some lessons at that time? I know you talked about piano lessons, but outside of the piano, did you take any other kind of lessons to help you?
Yeah, at that point, I think my parents thought it was a cute little hobby that I wanted to learn bass guitar. So they sent me, I was in lessons for 4 years. Me and my roommate, Scott, he plays drums for my solo band. We had the same teacher at the same time, and we didn't even know each other, which is just so crazy. Yeah, same. The teacher's name was Scott also, and he taught me like everything. Like he got me into Foo Fighters and Hole and Hot Heat and Primus. Like he got me into the coolest stuff. He made me cool. Like I'm so glad I had such a cool teacher who understood that I wanted to be in alternative music and wasn't teaching me like La Bamba and Beatles songs,
Yeah, I hear you. There's always that tendency for instructors to go down the path that they took back in the day whenever they started playing.
Yeah, respect to teachers who like update, like get with the times with their repertoire. Yeah, it's huge.
What about from a singing perspective? Did you take any lessons at all to help you with where you wanted to go with your voice?
Yeah, so when near the end of my first band, that Princess Riot band I was talking about, near the end of that, when we were dissolving, I had actually gotten, because I was like on stage, like I was just going crazy, like growling and popping my voice, just being angry riot girl. What happened was I got some polyps, and I actually had to go to ear, nose and throat doctor. And he's like, you have not nodes, thank God. Like the nodes are the ones that you need to get a surgery for. It's awful. I'm so grateful I've never had nodes, but I had a lot of polyps forming on my cords. And he's like, you need to go on an 8-week vocal rest. And I'm like, have you met me? Like I will chat up every stranger like that comes my way. Like you're telling me like I can't really talk or sing for 8 weeks. That was like, man, that was purgatory. Like at like 2021, I was like, this sucks. But then because of that, I found like an incredible vocal coach who I stuck with for 8 years. And that time was really like being a monk. Like it was very vital for me, because it's like you have 8 weeks, and instead of talking, you gotta listen. So during that time, I actually went to the used disc store, and during that time I discovered like Bjork and Led Zeppelin, and like I just found all this new music. I was like, okay, if I can't talk, I'm gonna listen. And that was a very transformative time that made me the weirdo I was in my 20s. But I found a coach in 8 years. It was boot camp. She's like, you need to learn opera. If you don't learn how to sing classically, you can't do anything, because it's a foundation. It's the most natural form of singing. So 8 years.
Wow.
Oh, would I do it over again? No. it was hard work.
But it was totally worth it. I mean, at the end, the end results speak for themselves.
Thank you.
So it was totally worth it. I at least that's how I see it. Looking back at how everything started for you and looking at where we are now in the world, have you seen an improvement? Is it easier for a woman that wants to get into metal or music in general in a professional sense? Is it easier? Do you see it easier today than it was, for example, for you?
Yeah, us girls like run the show now. Like being a woman in metal is like, it was a rarity, but now it's like awesome. You know, I think it's really cool to see women out there following their dreams and doing what they want. And, you know, I think it's okay. Like if there's a skill or a trade out there that is male dominated, like if you as a woman feel that it's your passion, it radiates so big. And it's like, you can't ignore that. And now that we have that place where we can just, you know, like I see like Nita Strauss like killing it, and I see like all these women like Elisa and Archenemy just out there like paving the way so strong for us. It's cool. Like, I mean, I think, yeah, like there's definitely a lot more, and no offense to the guys, like there is a lot of attention on women now, especially in metal. And was it a bit of a rarity when when my career first took off, like when I joined Cradle? Yeah, absolutely. And now being friends with Sarah Jezebel Deva at the time, like she was one of the OGs, like she was one of the first. Like back then, she's like, there wasn't many of us, and you know, she did her best and she left a legacy. Like she really helped me. She paved the way for me. And then I feel like my decade really paved the way for what there is now. Like you don't just have to be a singer. You can be a keyboardist, you can be a guitarist, you can be a drummer, like you can be a musician too. You don't just have to sing, because the female voice is very different from the male voice. And a lot of people do prefer the female voice in metal over the male voice, and that's fine. You know what I mean? Well, unless it's growling, then it's like, it's a whole other world, right?
Yeah,
But
it's hard to tell it apart.
yeah, but I mean, like now, like, do I think that we need, like, obviously I'm one of those people, I'm like, no, we don't need the term female fronted metal anymore. I think that it had its time. It really helped the fans that wanted that find the music and the bands to identify. But now it's like, we don't need the term, but I don't think we need to discard it entirely, because I think it is important to say, like, when there is a male and a female voice, because they are entirely different instruments, in my opinion. The male and the female voice are going to sound, for the most part, very different. So yeah, like I'm really proud of what I've been able to accomplish, especially when I was hit with a lot of resistance and adversity and egos. And like I you know, every, like, people could be like, did you experience this? And I'm like, yep, it happened. Like every sexist thing under the sun has happened to me. It's happened to everyone I know. And those just comes from other men, obviously. It's rare when a woman's tearing down a woman, we're like, what is wrong with you? You're like Corilla Deville, like you need us. Like, why aren't you yeah, like when it happens between women, I'm just like, okay, your funeral, because you're not going to have any friends, you know what I mean? Like, we need to rely on each other. But when it comes from men, it's just because they're insecure, they're mad, like they're scared they're going to lose their job. And once you identify that and you see, like, okay, like you had a bad relationship with women growing up, this isn't about me, then you can just, you know, see it for what it is, not take it to heart, and just be like, well, I'm just going to continue to work hard and do what I love. And if, you know, and I'm going to disassociate, or I'm going to do my best to deal with you, even though you're being difficult. Like, it's there. But now I'm in a place now where I have an incredible team around me, men and women, who gender isn't a thing. Like, it's just like, we all work together. We love one another. We have fun. And that's, you know, whenever women are feeling that way, you know, or anyone in this industry, if you're going through a hard time, just surround yourself with the awesomest people you can find and build a wicked team. And then you'll never really feel that resistance ever again.
Yeah, and I think you said a very important thing. I think hate or that kind of thought process towards somebody, you said about losing your job, I think all of that always comes from a place of fear. That's really where it all originates, regardless of how it comes across or how it's transmitted to the other people. Those kind of thoughts and that kind of way of thinking, it always comes from fear. Whatever that fear is, it's always there.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think, like, there are, not all men are like this. I can't be like, all men are like this. That's not fair. That's not true. But there are some men who's like, this is our boys club. Like, we want to keep metal to ourselves. And like, how dare all these women come in and think like they can be part of this? And I'm like, but we're awesome. And we bring so much to the table, like, you know, and it's just like, I feel like there's like, it's like an elitism. There is definitely like an elitism towards women. especially in like black metal. You know, and it's just kind of like you have two options. You can just like you can't argue with stupid. Like this person's going to be ignorant and stuck in their ways. You can just like try to have a conversation, and if it's like clearly that you're not getting through to this person, then just like walk away and ignore them, because like it'll get as big as you make it, like what you put into it. So like my best advice is just like work on yourself, and like when they're going to come at you with this smart ass remarks, you're just like, that's a poor reflection of you, not of me, and just continue on your path, right?
I think from the outside looking in, I felt that the progression is definitely there. If you look at 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, a woman in metal was almost like, oh, it's cute. That's kind of cute.
Yeah,
you know?
I've gotten that before.
You know what I mean? But now it's like, now I don't, in general, there's always going to be that group of people who's going to see it differently. But in general, I think most people now look at the band and they judge it based on the quality of the product that they're putting forward, regardless if there's a woman singing, playing guitar, drums, or what have you. At one point in time, maybe it was a selling point. I think now it's really more about the overall quality of what the product is, and that overshadows any gimmicks or any sort of person that you have as your front person. You know, I mean, you could have a troll as your front person, and if it works, it works. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. That's true. What is it, Necrogoblicon or
yeah,
what?
I was just going to say. I mean, like if you can have John Goblikon up there. I mean, if it works, it works. You know?
Yeah, and even like it's gotten to the point where like I didn't think about this until last fall, and I'm like, oh, there's 3 women in Antiqva, but it just like never crossed my mind, because I'm like, that's not a selling point for me. Like these are just awesome musicians that me and Zen wanted to work with, and I'm like, oh, like that's cool. Like when we go on tour, like that's gonna be, I'm so excited to be with 2 other women I love, admire, and respect. So it's just like, you know, it's you're right, it has gotten to the point where it's about the musicianship, and gender's just like, it's like, oh, you're a woman, okay, cool, like whatever, let's get to work.
It's not a shocking factor, or it's not even a factor anymore, at least for me. And I think in general people feel that way. But speaking of women and bands fronting a band, let's start off with the first band on your list, Oceans of Slumber. Now, when did you discover Oceans of Slumber?
So it was like right at the end of touring with Cradle and Nea Obliviscaris. Nea Obliviscaris were going into another tour, and Oceans of Slumber was going to be opening for them. And they came out to one of our Texas shows. And I didn't get a chance to meet Cammie, but she was there that night and saw our set. And then I was like, oh, I should check these guys out, you know, just like, I'm just interested, you know. And I listened to their first, it was the first album with Cammie on it, because I understand they had a different singer before. Yeah. And I was just like, holy, like I'm getting goosebumps talking about her. And I'm like, holy crackers, this woman can sing. And this music is so soulful and dark. And I was like, I'm here for this. Like, I am here for this. Like, I stand. So, you know, then the last 2 albums have just been like they got me through these last 13 months, honest to God. We hit it off. We became like really good friends. They actually asked me to join the band at one point, and I was like, I can't, I'm so busy with Cradle. Like, I'm so sorry. I wish now I'm just sitting here like I have regrets, but I digress. Like Dauber's like the piano, that man's a far better like composer on piano than I'll ever be, in my opinion, especially for the music they do. So I'm like, I listen to the new albums, I'm like, I couldn't do that. Like, that is magic. Like, you were born playing piano. Like, I'm good. So they just, that was it. And since then it's been a friendship, and I've performed on stage with them, and their music is really like, it really hits, it like punches you in the heart, you know?
Yeah, it does. You know, the funny thing about them is, first time that I heard them was the first album that when Cammie joined the band. That was the first time I heard of the band, was that album. And I was like, you know, it's kind of okay. I wasn't really into it. I'm not a big prog guy, so I wasn't really into it. Then I went to see Insomnium when they were on tour in North America with Oceans of Slumber opening for them. Saw them life-changing event. I was like, what the hell?
Was that the Toronto show?
Yeah, the Toronto show at the Garrison. I was like, this is incredible. Like, where have these people been? Like the album, and don't get me wrong, they're incredible in the studio, but
Mhm.
the live performance,
Yeah.
it's like she's speaking to your soul. She's not singing to you. She's going
Yeah.
deep inside of you, grabbing your soul
And just
and,
being
and,
like,
and whispering in their ear with very heavy words. You know what I mean? It's like, it was
yeah.
blowing. I walked out of that show a huge fan of the band.
Yeah, no, that I'll never forget that night. It was the performance, like even my boyfriend, who's we're still together, and well, we're metal musicians, so like we're stuck together for life. But he was just like, I really want to meet Dauber, but I'm scared to meet him because he's such a good drummer and like he's so much better than me. And I'm like, shut up, you're meeting my friends, you know, like stop. But that performance, like I think really impressed the whole Toronto scene that we have out here. And I laughed when you mentioned the show because I always look out for my girls when they're on tour, and anytime anyone is in town, I'm like, do you need anything? Do you need socks? Do you need underwear? Do you need tea? Like, what do you need? And she's like, we're out of toilet paper. Can you please bring me toilet paper? So I show up to the bus. Lindsay Schoolcraft's here, and I've got like a 12 pack of toilet paper.
Hey, these days during quarantine, that thing is worth gold.
It is gold now. It was gold. I didn't know we were exchanging gold, but like I show up and just they open the bus door and they're like, Cammy, your delivery's here. And I'm like, oh my God. It was great. It was just, yeah, that night. But no, they're like just so much respect for them and every album they release, and they get better and better. Like
100%.
hot damn.
Yeah, they seem to set the bar, and then the next album they move the bar.
Yeah.
And then, you know what I mean? Like it's just they're on a roll. Like they're just a super talented band. And like I said, I think for people who've never seen them live, you really have to experience that band live in order to really get the essence of what their performance is. Because when you see her singing, she's not just singing, you could feel what she's singing about. And to me, that's such an important element.
Yeah, it's like, man, it's like a spiritual experience.
Yeah,
it's something.
Yeah, it has a little bit of that in it. So the next band on your list is Catatonia. That's my son's favorite band of all time. He's a diehard Catatonia fan. He listens to their acoustic stuff, to the regular stuff, to all the stuff. He's just huge fan of that band. So Catatonia, what album? Do you remember the album that you discovered them with?
I was going through like one of the harder times in my life, and I picked up The Great Cold Distance, and that album like saved me. Like I, to this day, it was such a dark time in my life, early 20s, going through some shit, as we all do.
So you're going through the darkest time of your life, and you pick out one of the bands that's perhaps one of the darkest bands.
It healed me. Like
1 + 1 = 2 here.
Yeah, it was the strangest thing. Like it was just like this big hug. Like your feelings and your experience are valid, and the way like Jonas sings, like he just like there's so much pain in his story, in his voices, and I'm like, you know, it kind of told me like it's okay to be that musician who expresses pain in the way that you're feeling it. Like it was like his music transformed me as a writer and as a singer in such a way where I was just like, you know, it's okay to be going through this right now, because clearly he's gone and the members of this band have gone through this. It's very dark music, but yeah, it forever changed me as a musician, as like how I view metal. And again, like every album after, like I was always there for it with everything that they keep releasing. And then I'm not trying to be like, oh, I met all these famous people, but it's just part of the story. You know, I'm at was it Hellfest, and we ran into Moonspell, and Fernando's such a shit disturber. Like I love him, but like the stuff that he does, I'm like, Fernando, shut up, you know? So yeah, great guy, obviously. All the guys in Moonspell are. And there was Jonas was like hanging out with the guys in Opeth, and half of Moonspell was there, and I was like, Fernando's like, oh, so what's going on? And I'm like, you know, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe Jonas is over there. Like I've had like 5 chances to meet him and I chicken out every time. And Fernando's like, yo, really? And he just grabs me and brings me over to him, and he's like, introduce each other, and we're like both blushing. It's hilarious. And I was just like, I love your music, and Like I just like pretty much everything that I just told you, I got to tell him. And he was just like, he was so touched and sweet. And I was like, okay, circle complete. Like we're good. He knows I exist. And now, you know, like now we stay in touch when we can. And I did write and say like that last album was something else. Like I like how they kind of got a little bit weird and experimental, but that's why I respect Catatonia, because they always keep their sound.
It's still dark.
It's still dark, but like they're not they're not afraid to be like, we're gonna like throw a trip hop beat in here, like we're gonna do this. And I'll never get mad at Jonas for how many times he sings the word darkness. Me and Rich and Cradle had a joke like we should start a drinking game, listen to Catatonia and drink every time he says darkness. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I will end up in the hospital, but okay. Like, so, but yeah, no, just what a brilliant band that has always like stayed true to their vision. You know, yeah, they're definitely like they're healers. Like I feel like anyone who has picked up Catatonia has really healed from a hard time in their life. And I think that's brilliant, honestly.
I agree with you 100%. And the next one on your list, I would be absolutely shocked if Kittie was not on your list. I mean, I think we would have to revoke your Canadian passport and your citizenship and send you like somewhere else far, far away, perhaps Alaska, considering some of the maps that I've seen lately where
you saw that, right?
Yeah, like what the hell?
When did Alaska become part of Canada?
Yeah, like, what the hell happened here? Like did these people have geography in school? Like what happened? Countries, you know, Canada's a very big country. I mean, it's kind of hard to miss it. So I would be extremely shocked if Kittie was not on your list. And I was happy to see that it was on your list, so we don't have to engage the Canadian government to deal with you. So Kittie, how much of an influence have they been on you, not just at that period in time when they were absolutely massive, but since that time all the way up until now, how much have they stayed with you?
To this day, like now I'm friends with them, which is weird because I'm like, you know, you're 15 and you're listening to Spit and you're like, oh my God, like this is incredible. This is like what I want to do with my life. I'll never be able to growl like that, but like, whoa. And they've stayed in my life up until this point. And such wonderful people. But I think it was like the moment where I realized it's okay to be a woman in heavy music, and the sole focuses on the fact that you're musicians and you're good songwriters and you don't have to over sexualize yourself. Like you can make music and be respected for being musicians, and you're not seen as like this thing that like they want you to strip down and get naked. They were also super young. Like when they blew up, they were like 15. So that was really inspiring for me because I was the same age.
Yeah, and
I was like, whoa, like this band. Is
right.
My terrible riot girl punk band. Yeah, like, oh, well, we tried. Kittie was definitely an influence on that for sure. And it was just like I followed them every year. Like they put out an album, I was there for it, you know, and it was really important for me. And you know, I had befriended Morgan, and I was moving out of my old home that I lived in for 20 years, and I found my high school binder, and there's like all these like, you know, like kind of like your first vision board, baby's first vision board, and it's like your high school binder, and you're sitting there in math class and you're like, yeah, math sucks, but like I'm gonna be like these guys, you know, like the pictures are on the outside of your binder. And she was one of them, and I sent her a picture and I just said, like, you have no idea like what you've done for me as a musician, and because of everything that you did, the legacy that you left, like I am where I am today because of you. And she was just so touched, such a nice person. And then it was really cool with joining Cradle and then hearing Danny's stories about like touring with Kittie on Ozfest. And he's like, out of all the women I've worked with and toured with, he's like, I am the most afraid of Morgan Lander, because one time she beat me up in a parking lot and like literally picked me up on her back and threw me. And I was like, that's really impressive. So I was, you know, like hearing this story, and then Danny's like, the worst part is it was on my birthday. So I messaged her And I was like, did you, you know, like, I'm hearing this story. You're such a brat. Like you beat him up on his birthday. She's like, it was his birthday. Like, I had no idea. So yeah, she's just like, she's such a legend, like, you know, and that band is like what they did for women in music has just, it's just transcended decades. And so many women I know in heavy metal now are like, they always like give so much respect to like Evanescence and Kittie and Garbage, and you know, like all these women back then, early 2000s, like that really gave us the confidence to be like, yeah, like we don't have to like, you know, dress up like the Pussycat Dolls or like Christina Aguilera just to make it in this industry. Like we can be ourselves, we can be respected as musicians. I'm sorry, I'm like broken record. I've said that like 3 times, but yeah. So Kittie, you know, and I love how like they matured so much. They did Spit, and it was like, you know, going back and listening now, it's like very nostalgic, and is like, would I draw any inspiration from this? Probably not, because that was like the music that they made at that age, that I made at that age. But they matured with every album. Like Oracle is fantastic. I will fight anyone. I don't care. Oracle is an incredible album. And then I think it was it Until the End? I feel like I'm not getting that album title right. That came out near the end of me being in high school. And I was just like, this is still good shit. Like they're still making great music, you know? So yeah, I mean, would I like to see them return? Absolutely. I've played with them, so I feel like I've like, okay, like, you know, off of the bucket list.
Yeah, bucket
but
list.
yeah, what an incredible band. Like such, just for their time, what they've accomplished, so much respect.
It's really nice to hear you talk like that about them, because I think you're representing your generation right, because I think everybody in your generation feels that way towards them. So they've had a huge impact on a very specific group of people, but a massive impact nevertheless. The next band on your list, Dimmu Borgir. I'm not shocked either. I'm actually shocked that you don't have Cradle of Filth on your list, but you know, Dimmu, I think maybe that would be a little bit too much. It's like you're performing on stage wearing the shirt of your own band. Perhaps that would be a little bit equal to that.
I was never a Cradle fan. Like I didn't like Cradle until the year they asked me to be a stand-in live, and like Dimmu Borgir was like my ride or die for black metal. And I always used to like piss off Danny by reminding him of that at least once a month.
Did you tell him like, okay, I'll stay here until Dimmu calls? If Dimmu Borgir
I've said that. Yeah. I was like, guys, yo, Shaggy calls me, like, I'm out of here. No, like I was just being a dick. But no, like Cradle was never my jam. I didn't appreciate Cradle until I really like started giving a shit about symphonic metal, I'd say in like 2010, 11. And then person I was with at the time gave me Midian and said, you might like this now. And I did. I mean, I'm like, like to this day, like I can't stand Danny's voice. I've never liked his voice. He knows that. I will remind him every day. But what Sarah
even
did,
twice on his birthday.
yeah, twice on his birthday, because I can't physically like throw him across the parking lot, but I digress. So I'm sure whatever he was doing, he deserved it. I'm sure he deserved it. But like what Sarah did on that album, the choirs, like Midian holds such a place in my heart, especially Cruelty and Dusk, absolutely. And Hammer of the Witches, because that was like a big moment in time for that lineup, and being a part of that, very, very cool. But Dimmu Borgir, like, I can't think, like, I love all their albums. They just like inspired me to write classical music, to you know, really pursue classical music. Like the reason I ended up in university was because of Nightwish and Dimmu Borgir. And yeah, like it's Dimmu, it's classic. And it's like I usually, you know me, like you've seen me at a concert, like we'll be watching a set and I'll be like, you know, you can come over and talk to me, and I'll be like, hey, what's up, blah, blah, blah. And like, there was one night where I saw Flesh God, but I don't remember the set because so many people came up to me and talked to me. Like I didn't get to watch the show. But the last time Dimmu came to Toronto, you know, Noel Peters of Inertia was very kind, very giving, and gave me like front row on the balcony. I was not expecting that. I thanked him profusely after.
Yeah,
and I'm just sitting there with my partner.
I was at that show. That was it was after they released their album. They did 4 stops in North America. Toronto was one of the 4 stops. The only problem with that
Yeah.
show was that the
Yeah.
set was like a festival set. They played for 45 minutes. That was it.
It was like an hour and 15, I think. I
It
don't
was,
remember. It was short. It
was
was really
short, like
short.
super short. It felt like
Yeah.
they checked their sound and they left. That's kind of how it felt to me. I wanted
Yeah,
more.
it was quick. I wish they had, like, because when I was in Cradle, like we'd play for 2, sometimes 2.5 hours, depending. So, or usually 2:15, I think we'd push. But I was there like front row, and like anytime someone tried to talk to me, I'd be like, shh, Dimmu is playing. Like, do like I was just like I was like on the edge of my seat. Like I was like, this is my favorite band ever. Like I was so stoked. Yeah, no, they're just there's something about Dimmu Borgir. It's so raw and consistent and powerful and magical. I can't explain it. I've been in love with that band ever since, like, I guess I super gave a shit about them in 2008, and that's what started the whole thing. Like I put on a vision board, like I will be in tour in a symphonic black metal band. The universe gave me Cradle, Phil. That was like close. Not what I asked for, but okay, like I'll take it. But I like they inspired me, but now I have Antiqva, so I can live out that in like a smaller setup, like chamber black metal. It's like a discount symphonic metal. I don't know, but
Hey, you never know. You guys will,
no, like
we'll end up going on the road with Dimmu Borgir once this whole thing is over.
oh my God, I would just pee in my pants all the time. I just like I do our set and be like, guys, you packing up? Good. I'm getting ready. Like I'm gonna go watch a Dimmu set. Like no interviews after the show, nothing. Like leave me alone. This mom's hour with Dimmu Borgir, So but I want to say, like everyone has like their opinions on like what's the best album, obviously with the band being around that long. But for me, it was Death Cult Armageddon. Really was the album that stuck with me. And I don't know, it's like the old school true cult people are like, what for all tid, I can never pronounce it properly, like, no, the old stuff's better. And I'm like, cool, like it's good, but I don't know what it was. Death Cult, and then Puritanical was really good. And I honestly, like people had their mixed feelings about Abrahadabra, but like that was really good. I don't care, like as a symphonic composer, like that album for me was like crack. It was really good. So yeah, they've just always been in my life. Anytime I'm grumpy or like want to fight someone or yell at someone, to get out my teenage angst that's still there, throw on some Dimmu Borgir, and I'm like, everything's fine with the world, like it's gonna be okay.
I think they do that for a lot of people. They just have that ability to kind of make the world disappear, and you're living in this void created by them. So I think that's one of the beauties of their music.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always been like my escape, kind of like Catatonia. Catatonia is more like therapy, and then Dimmu Borgir is more like going out for a drink with your buddies.
I was gonna say, one is therapy, the other one is more anger management at a different level.
Yeah.
And going from anger management perhaps to something that it's not going to anger you, but this is a band that I'm not surprised once again that's on your list. I know you love Evanescence, and that's the reason why I left them for last. Has your love for Evanescence remained unwavering over all these years and throughout all their records?
No, it's like like I'm really like like the whole time, like I'm like, okay, so like I'm never usually like even the hint of elitist, and I'm not like trying to be a prick with anything I say in the next 10-20 minutes, however long we go on about this. But the Evanescence I fell in love with was when Fallen came out, as it like was for everybody, because that's when they blew up. They were on Wind Up, and they've just been like a huge influence on me. Like, I was in this whole Riot Girl punk band, and I was like, what is alternative music? And then Evanescence comes along, and it just shows me, like, it brought out a part of me that I was like, you can be this like beautiful ethereal musician, like emitting darkness in your stories. And like the Evanescence that I fell in love was very like dark romantic in its sound and its lyrics, and it's like you can still be like respected as a musician. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. And I mean, her voice is incredible. Like, you know, the music's like always like especially during that era, it was just like, wow, like it was like nobody heard anything like that before. So I fell in love with that. And then what happened was, before The Open Door came out, which was their second studio album, I found all their like old demos. This is such a black metal thing to say. I found all their old demos from before Fallen, and that was like, holy crap, this is just this weird ambient gothic music. Sometimes it's rock, sometimes it's like something, you know, maybe Sarah McLachlan could get away with. Like I was like, this is just amazing. Like I just fell in love with the band because of all like Origin, Not For Your Ears, which is the demo version of Fallen. All the stuff they did in high school. I was like, this is just beautiful. It's so dark. And it's like, you know, like finding some serenity or like something serene, that tranquil moment walking through a graveyard. And just like when you're trying to find yourself in life and you're thinking about like, why am I here? What's my purpose? Like, I'm going to die one day. Like, what am I going to do about that? You know, and you're listening to this music and you're just like, oh, this is so comforting, because like, I could be okay with my mortality, and I could be okay with like having my heart broken. It was like the best thing ever to happen to me musically. I could go on forever. But then they brought out The Open Door, and that was like a huge key influence for like, I'm gonna study classical piano, I'm gonna get vocal training. Like it came out around that time. I was like, I need to get serious about music. Like if people are gonna take me seriously, like Amy Lee set the bar for like, you know, like you got to be trained, you got to know your classical music, you got to know like your piano. And that was like, okay, like if I'm going to make a career out of this, like I have to have some credentials under my belt, because she couldn't like have made The Open Door if she didn't have all the training that she did. So there was that. And like it was, I remember at the time, like as a musician, that album was really like, you know how there's bands, like there's music for musicians, like they appeal to, like sometimes they appeal to the masses, but then they get super techie and weird. And then all of a sudden, like I feel like bands like A Perfect Circle is music for musicians, Peripheries music for musicians. Like I could be wrong. I'm going all over the place, but like even people who have music on the side as a hobby, like, you know, you just like the mainstream stuff just doesn't cut it for you anymore. You need something that makes you think a little bit more and make you feel a little bit something else. Like every artist I know likes Bjork, but anyone who listens to mainstream music doesn't know who Bjork is, right? So kind of in that way. So when The Open Door came out, it wasn't very well received because everyone was just expecting like a follow-up to Fallen, but all us like music geeks were like, this is the best thing ever. Like we were so stoked. So, you know, the hardest part, let me tell you about the struggles of being an Evanescence fan. The hardest part is just like waiting so long for like albums to come out in between, because like sometimes they take like 6-10 years to put out an album, and at that point it's just like, you know, y'all kept me waiting here, and it's like in the meantime, like I had to find other music to tie me over. Like thank God, you know, and I'm not saying like these bands are replacement, but like thank God I had like, you know, Dimmu and the Birthday Massacre and Bjork to like keep me occupied, because I'm just like waiting for more, like a fiend, you know. And it's like a lot of what I'm going to say now is probably going to get super controversial, and if anyone cancels me, like that's your problem. But you know, I think Evanescence had the sound that so many of us fell in love with in the first place because of that original lineup. And when Rocky and John and Ben started We Are the Fallen with Carly and Marty, that was like, I was like, oh my God, give it to me. Like I was so stoked, and I love that album. And I was not, you know, I'm not like, oh, it's a replacement, or, you know, like it really shows that like they are that sound, you know what I mean? Like that was them, you know, and I'm not taking a shot at Amy, because Amy is like brilliant. She's an incredible songwriter and singer, like, you know, but it's like they have changed and they are very different. Like fast forward now, they are very different. And, you know, they put out the self-titled, and I liked a lot of it. Did it influence me and impact me as much as what I've said with the older stuff? No, but I appreciated it. And this new album, like, it's just so far from what I fell in love with and what has had a huge influence on my life, that like I see it, you know, I respect it. I'm so happy for Jen, you know, and it's like people are loving it, and that's awesome. For me though, it's just not like punching me in the feels like the old stuff did. And like that happens. And I'm also like, just people have to remember, like, I'm super like jaded. Like when when you've been writing music and producing it and listening to so much music as long as me, like it's been like a 30-year long thing on top of 20 years in the industry. You're gonna get jaded. Like you're gonna have, like you said, like we talked about, like the standard, like Oceans of Slumbers, like, then they went up and then they went up. And when they put out this new album and like there's not a lot of piano, there's no harp, I was like, yo girl, what? Like I was really sad. And there's barely any choirs and strings. Well, that's what I came here for in the first place. So like, why, if it's not there, like the electronics are cool, like that, there's a throwback to like the old school days. But yeah, like as a fan, it's like I'm happy for them, and like I'm glad it's doing so well. But as a fan, I'm just kind of waiting for like, so when's all the dark music with the choirs and the strings and the harp gonna come back? Because that's what I'm living for. And when they did Synthesis, like that was awesome. When they toured with the orchestra and they put out that album, it was pretty cool. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting. Maybe this is what the next album's gonna be like. And it was like, no. And I'm like, okay, but like as a fan, like I have to respect that. And as a musician fan, I have to be like, okay, shut up, Lindsay. Like it's not your band. And if they're happy and if they're proud of it, like that's enough. Not that my opinion matters. Like I'm a flea in, the giant mammoth that is Evanescence. But
yeah, but I think you hit a lot of important points there, because I think they're a band that almost resets their fan base with every release. They're not a band that necessarily, I mean, the fans who became fans of the band with the first album, like you, those kind of stay with the band all the way throughout. I mean, they'll complain that this album's not as good as the other one or what have you, but they're still going to listen to the album regardless. But at the same time, I feel like they're a band that almost allows a new fan base to rediscover them with every record that they release. So for as many fans that they may lose along the way, they end up picking up a whole bunch of new ones, because each album is going to target almost a different style of audience,
It's true. And I've noticed that a lot with their new album. Like they have like a younger fan base of like teens and the TikTok generation and people in their 20 and mid 20s who are like really digging the newer stuff. And I'm like, that's really cool. Like good on you for being able to do that, because not a lot of bands can do that. They really can't.
Not everybody is Slayer. You know what I mean? Like album 1, album 35, it's,
or Metallica or Metallica, so exactly.
I think they're more of a band like that. For me, I discovered Evanescence with a debut record, like everybody else. I mean, it was impossible to be alive at that point in time and not listen to Evanescence on.
Oh, it was like there. Yeah, it was
like you turn on much music for us in Canada, Evanescence was on. You turn on the radio, Evanescence was on. You went to a bar, Evanescence would play. I mean, it would be like literally everywhere.
Yeah, they were in movies. Yeah.
Yeah,
you couldn't get away from it.
You couldn't get away from it. But I think they're a band that when you for some fans, when you hear their name, you think of that debut record. That's where, regardless of everything else that they've done, that's always where your mind goes. At least for me, when I think of Evanescence, I think debut album. I always go back to those roots. And like I said, but at the same time, there's going to be people who are going to say that their album of choice is the album that they discovered the band with. They're one of those bands that just drops fans, or fans drop out, new fans come in with a new album, and they just find a way to continue to survive and have a very long career.
Yeah,
and like respect. To be said, it's like, not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. And it's like, like, okay, I'm not crazy about the new album, but like if whenever live music comes back up, if they're in town, absolutely, I would go see them live. Like that's I've always been lucky, especially when I was with Cradle. Like I was always home for their shows, and I'm so happy, because like if I missed one, I think I would just be like heartbroken. Like it's a tradition, it becomes tradition. All of a sudden you have like this 20-year tradition that you don't want to break.
Well, if they were to bring the tour that they had announced for Europe before COVID, which was Within Temptation, that would have been an incredible tour to go to. I saw them, Evanescence, at Heavy Montreal in 2019.
Yeah, apparently that was a really good set.
It was a really good show.
Good show. I heard a lot of positive reviews from people that day who saw it. And I was like, that's awesome. I'm sad I missed it. I was like obviously in Europe somewhere, but Yeah, super cool.
I think at that, yeah, I think you're around that time. Was there a
Festival
festival?
season. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
I think you guys were playing at Vagos or something in Portugal actually around that time, if I remember
I
correctly.
think you're right. Yeah, well, your memory's better than mine. Like that whole year was a blur.
Seems like 10 years ago.
It does. It's just like, what? That was only 2 years ago. Like it feels like forever ago because
Yeah, it
time's
seems
just
like
slowed down so much or sped up. I don't know.
Well, Lindsay, I want to thank you very much for taking the time. I don't want to press you anymore on Evanescence because it's a soft spot for you. I mean,
Yeah.
I know how much you love the band, and
I'm still a stan for life, but as a musician, it's like you're gonna be opinionated. It's the hardest part.
yeah, like I always say to people, if you enjoy a record, don't worry about the new record. You can always go back and play the old record. Just listen.
That's what I was saying. I was like, guys, let's just go listen to the old stuff. Like, it's okay. Like, you're not, but I know some people are just like, love it. And it's like, if that's, you know what I mean? If it's doing it for you, like, I'm happy for you. Cause like, there's Dimmu albums that I love and people are like, ew. And I'm like, whatever gets me through the day. So,
yeah, when it comes to taste in music and art in general, it really comes down to the individual who's listening to it, because I think we all bring our own personal experiences into it. And depending on what we've gone through our lives and what music means to us and what has represented in our own journey, we're going to bring that into the forefront when we're listening to something. So it's impossible for me and you listen to the same song and have exactly the same experience, because it's going to mean something different to you than it's going to mean to me.
Exactly. And it's like the teen years are tough. I'm sure there's one band and album right now that you can be like, that got me through my teenage years. Right. And it's like, that's your experience. And like,
and it was Suicidal Tendencies, Controlled by Hate.
That's awesome. See, you're like the first person to tell me that. That's amazing.
That was it. I listened to How Will I Laugh Tomorrow When I Can Even Smile Today. I used to listen to that song on loop, the whole album, but that song specifically, because I just felt like nobody understood me. Nobody felt the pain that I felt. But this guy is talking about, how can I laugh today when I can even smile tomorrow? Like, I mean, that is like exactly how I felt at that time. I just felt like there was no tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? So yes, we all have those records.
Yes, we do. So yeah, that's the thing. It's like, guys, these are just my opinions. Like what I say is not Wikipedia. It's not, in stone. So yeah, I mean, if I get canceled for it, I get canceled. But
yeah, you're not gonna get canceled. No, nobody's canceling Lindsay. Let's put it that way.
I hope not. But even if I just
nobody's canceling you. You'll cancel yourself before somebody cancels you.
These scissors. Yes. We've been playing with these whole time. But yeah, no, like it's true. That's what it comes down to. Is like, you just like, you gotta think before you speak, because like, if you just go on the internet and like blurt out what was your diary that day, you're gonna probably cancel yourself and piss off a lot of people.
Yeah. It's just, sometimes it's good to have a filter. Sometimes, I mean, I'm guilty of not having one most of the time, but I feel like, you know what, I'm too old, so I just don't care anymore. It's just,
is that what happens? Because like, I'm 35 now, and I feel like when I'm in my 40s, that's gonna start to happen.
When I reached that 40 plateau, that's the moment I said, you know what, I don't care anymore. I basically, my best years are behind me. So like, if I'm gonna live now going forward, I'm gonna live on my own accord, by my own rules. And you know what? Have it your way, and I'm gonna have it my way. That's the only way I can one day die happy. It's to make myself happy, not really worry about how others perceive me.
I love that. I'm so excited. I don't know. I think your best years are ahead of you if that's the case.
No, I'm not a vintage wine. You know what I mean? If I was a vintage wine, then obviously the best years are ahead of me, because the older you get, the better you are. I'm more like a loaf of bread, right? So like, you want to have it as soon as it comes out of the oven. And I've been out of the oven for a very long time. So you know what I mean? I'm getting kind of stale.
So you're croutons now, and croutons are the best part of salad. So hey,
that is my favorite thing about a Caesar salad. So I guess there is some positives. Croutons, I never thought about that. That's a good one.
See, yeah, I think your best years are ahead of you, man. Like your croutons. I haven't met someone who don't like croutons, so I think you're okay.
That's true. Well, Lindsay, thank you very much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure and a blast. All the best for you and all of your projects. I know you're super busy, so I'm sure we'll chat again down the road when one of those projects starts to hit the light of day.
Hell yeah, it's gonna happen for sure. Thank you for talking today. It's made
All
my
right.
whole day, my whole week. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.